My name is Bobby. I'm the family pastor here at the Konnection Church, and I'm excited to be able to teach to you today and be with you guys for what I believe is going to be a pivotal moment in our spiritual growth. I'm doing a you, Miss Pam. Just can't get it out. It's the Georgia in us. We'll get through it though. We've been in this series called Kings: How Nations Rise and Fall. Question: are you enjoying it? I think it's been pretty phenomenal. I think that I have learned so much from it. Pastor Cole talked week 1 about when the king of fear, pride, if you will, King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of pride, got the throne in your life. How your family rises and falls if you let pride lead. Last week he talked about the king of insecurity, King Rehoboam, and when you let insecurity have rule and reign over your leadership, whether that's with your parenting or at your office, your place of business, wherever you work, everything rises and falls on these leadership principles. And today I want to talk to you about another king in the Bible, King Ahab. Anybody heard of him? Yes. He goes down as the most evil king in all of the book. In the history of the world, this guy goes down as the most, demonic. You're like, that's too strong a word. No, it really doesn't even touch him. Ahab and all the idols that he followed and led the nation of Israel into. Today I want to talk to you about when idolatry has kingship, lordship in your life. And to do that, we're going to go to a story found in 1 Kings. So if you would, turn your Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 18. We're going to read a part of a story, and then I'll hopefully lay the groundwork with that and be able to explain our way through it. But this will be where we start in verse 16. It says, "So Obadiah went to Ahab and told him." Obadiah told King Ahab, this is one of King Ahab's servants, that Elijah the prophet is in the area and he wants to have a conversation with you, king. And Elijah says, okay, I'll meet with him. And Ahab went to meet Elijah, verse 17. When Ahab saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is it you, you troubler of Israel?" And Elijah answered, "I have not troubled Israel, but you have, and your father's house, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and followed the Baals. Now, therefore, send and gather all of Israel to me at Mount Carmel, and the 450 prophets of Baal, and the 400 prophets of Asherah, who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent and all the people of Israel and gathered all the prophets together at Mount Carmel. Verse 21, and Elijah came near to the people and said, I want you to tune in if you're not. I want you to listen to the words that Elijah says to everyone here. He says, how long will you go limping between two different opinions? How long will you go limping between two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people said nothing. Another version puts it like this. Elijah challenged the people and said, how long are you going to sit on the fence, America? If God is real, follow him. If Baal is real, make up your minds. But you got to get in the game. I want to talk to you today from the title, Follow the Leader. Follow the leader. Turn to your neighbor. Tell them my title. Say, neighbor, follow the leader. And then sing to him, I will follow you. Follow you wherever you may go. Anybody know who that is? Everybody's like, no, that's, I believe it's Ricky something. Not Ricky Martin, but Ricky something in the 50s, the 40s. But I know it from Sister Act, Whoopi Goldberg. Anybody with me? Yeah. And the millennials are like, who? Just as lost as everybody else. Like, who? That's Sister Act, Whoopi Goldberg. Like, that's the OG Pitch Perfect millennial. Just so you know. Go back and watch it. Great 90s show. No, who you follow matters, right? Who you're listening to, it leads you. So today we want to talk about following the right leader in our life. And we're going to pray before we start one more time. Heavenly Father, we come to you. We ask you, God, to move in mighty and powerful ways in our lives and in this room today. We thank you that as we open up your word, it's full of truth. Lead us and guide us in the ways and the plans that you have for us. Show us and reveal to us how much you love us today. And God, thank you that even though it seems like there's a lot going on, it's because there's a lot going on. The enemy might be doing a lot because he knows you're up to a lot. And so we trust you and we rely on you fully and wholeheartedly to do great things in our lives and to show up in powerful ways. And we ask this all in the precious and the holy name of your amazing Son, Jesus, and the whole church said, Amen. Hey, where are my rule followers at? Any rule followers? About half the room. I'm not a rule follower. Where are my people who are good with directions at? Okay, the same people who said I'm good at rule following are the same people that said I'm good at directions. Who is horrific with directions? Me too. My wife graded me. I said, hey, babe, how would you grade my sense of direction, like receiving directions, like in the car, like going to Florida? You're usually the co-pilot and you're doing all the navigation. And she goes, do you want me to be honest? I was like, yeah. She's like in total or like today? Because you kind of want me to grade on a curve. I was like, no, for real. She's like, 7 at best. I was like, for real? I got that high? It's amazing. But there's a principle when we talk about leadership and specifically with this concept of following. I tend to find, I don't know about you, that the greatest leaders tend to be the best followers. Do you agree with that? I mean, it's a business principle. If you want to make lots of money, you're not going to listen to people whose businesses are going under and staying under. You're going to go to people who, the Warren Buffetts, if you will, the leadership principles, the financial steps to gaining success. You're going to follow them, listen to their advice because they've been through it. They've done it. So the greatest leaders are the greatest followers, but not just in business, in the Bible. If you look at Joshua, he followed Moses for 40 years. 40 years before he led the children of Israel into the promised land and took on army after army and fight after fight. You also, I think of Elisha. We're talking about Elijah. Elisha follows Elisha for 10 years as the water boy, the servant of the prophet before he takes over the mantle, the ministry, and ends up doing many, many more miracles. Timothy follows Paul in the New Testament. Peter followed Jesus for 3 years and stuck his foot in his mouth every step of the way before God used him on the day of Pentecost to save 3,000 people and turn the world upside down and start the church. The best leaders tend to be the best followers. And here's a secret when it comes to who you and I should be following. It's typically not the person who has the most followers that we follow. Let me make you an example. Hitler had millions of followers. Jesus had 12. Who are you following? Who are you listening to? If the greatest leaders, if you and I are called to lead our families, if we're called to lead our communities, if we're called to lead our children, if we're called to lead out at work, if we're called to lead out in community, if we're called to lead out in government, how do we lead if we're following anything other than God's will for our life? Yeah. The question is, who do you follow? Who do you follow? Or let me put it this way, with the multiplicity of options out there today, who do I need to follow? Who do I choose to follow? If you look on your seat, you'll find your power verse for the week. It's from Joshua 24:15, talking about choosing who you will follow. It says, choose today whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Yeah. Can we say that together? Say it with me. Choose today whom you will serve. But as for me and my house, we will serve. We will serve the Lord. Amen, right? Choosing who you will follow. Elijah says the same thing if we go back and we look at the story, he says, if God is the Lord, follow him. But if Baal is who you're going to choose to follow, then follow him. But you can't have it both ways. You can't have your cake, and what's the saying? And eat it too. You can't have God, Yahweh, who you serve on the Sabbath in the temple, and Baal and whatever he demands and whatever he requires. We're talking about when idolatry is king today in our lives. And we look at Elijah, and he's assembled the entire nation of Israel. Check this. Not just the 400 prophets of Baal and the 450 prophets of Asherah, but every man, woman, and child in Israel come to this mountain so that Elijah can call them out. He gathers them together to call them out on this topic of idolatry. And he says, hey, this is a huge no-no. This is a massive sin. This is not cool. You can't do this. You know the 10 Commandments, right? We know the 10 Commandments. Yeah. What's the first one? You shall have no other gods before me. Like, quit focusing on the murder and the stealing and the idolatry. Like, focus on, like, putting nothing before me. If you get that right, everything else seems to just fall in place. The fourth commandment is honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. How can you go to church if you're serving and following something other than God consistently in your life? See how it's a progression. It just falls. If you can get God, don't neglect your Father. Rule number 1, never make God number 2. God will put up with many things. God will put up with many things, but there's one thing that he will never put up with, and that's second place. He will not put up with it. He can't stand it. If you got God in second place in any area of your life, I'm here to tell you today, he's the God of no place in your life. What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, but Pastor Bobby, I don't have idolatry problem. Like, I don't serve idols. There's no Buddha in my front yard. In fact, it's almost Christmas season. I'm about to put out a little nativity scene with a gold baby Jesus on my fire mantle. It's not like full of engraven trinkets and little wooden carved statue and golden images like on my fire mantle. Like, I don't have an idol problem. Yes, what I just rattled off are all pictures and images of idols, right? But so are celebrities. So are the music and the entertainment industry. So is the influencers on social media. Look at what Paul says to the church in Corinth, because idolatry is not just an Old Testament issue. It plagued the New Testament church so much so that Paul puts it this way. He says, therefore, my dear friends, flee from idolatry. Anybody seen those TikToks that are like, run, dun, 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 dun. It's like, and people just start running with everything they have. It's like Paul saying, run with everything you got. Flee from idolatry. Don't follow it. My goodness, don't follow it. Flee from it. There are some things in our life I want to reveal to us today, show us today that we are following, that we should be fleeing from. I've got well, I mean, I can tell you, like, America loves its idols, right? There was American Idol that was an incredible run of 15 seasons. Anybody know who the first American Idol was? Winner was? Kelly Clarkson! You know exactly what I'm talking about. But for 8 straight years, it was number 1. America loves its idols. America loves following things and putting things before God. And I want to talk to you today about 3 things that we can identify. They might not look like idols that you have a perception in your mind of, but I promise you, as we navigate through them this morning, you will see them and go, you know what? That's something I shouldn't be following. That's something I should be fleeing from in my life. Because when it comes to idolatry, idolatry has phony promises. We know that God has lots of promises, but so does everything else that presents itself as a little g God in our life. Will promise you, but they're empty, they're shallow, they're hollow, they are fake, they're false, they're facade, they're phony. That's just what it is, the phony promises of God. And the first thing I want us to see today is that when an idol presents itself in your life, it will promise you provision. First point. Idolatry always promises at some level that it can provide, that it can come through for you, that it can give you something. Look at what, this is going to blow your minds, I promise you. I'm going somewhere with this. Look back at verse 18. And he answered, I am not the troubler of Israel, but you are. This is Elijah to King Ahab. Because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord, and you have followed the bells, the Baals. I don't know how you say it. We'll just go with bells. The balls. The primary attraction to Baal wasn't that he was a pretty statue. It was that he was the rider of the clouds. You following me? They worshiped Baal because he promised rain. He was the God of rain. You couple that with the situation that they're in the middle of a 3-year drought. Israel is. They find themselves in a drought. Because of their sin of idolatry, God starts to punish them. There's consequences. He's trying to get them to have repentant hearts, turn from their wicked ways, flee from idolatry, turn back to worshiping God, and he'll provide rain. But because they're worshiping this God of provision, I'll provide the rain, God says, I'll withhold the rain for 3 years to show you who really does provide. You follow me? It's not like the children of Israel stopped worshiping God at this time. It's crazy. They still went to the temple. Listen to me. It sounds just like America today. It sounds like church today. They still paid their tithes. They still said a prayer every now and then, especially when they needed something for God. But they also worshiped Baal because, hey, if you're a farmer, if you're in the business of agricultural back in the day, why not, as an insurance policy, have the God of provision, the rider of the clouds on your side? Better safe than sorry, right? Does it sound like you and me? Does it sound like the state that we find ourselves in today? Like, hey, it's God. Yeah, it's God. And no. If it's God and, it's not God.
Oh, wow.
If it's God and, then whatever the and is who you're following, and God is just who you go to when you really, 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 really need some help. They go to Baal because he is providing the promise that he can come through. We do this today. It may not be with rain, but it's with whatever offers to provide peace in our life. If it provides the promise of success, if it promises the provision of approval, oh my gosh, the relief. If it can promise me that it will provide relief from my stress, my fear, my anxiety, my worry, we'll exalt it, won't we?
Yeah.
Money is funny. Change is strange. It says right there on the front of it, in God we trust. Yet it's what we put our trust in to provide a sense of security financially. Money's not a God. Oh, yes, it is. Career, the promise to provide stability in my life, can be an idol. Woo, relationships. How many people you know jump from bad relationship to bad relationship to bad relationship?
Yeah.
Maybe failed marriage to failed marriage to failed marriage. Why is the question? Well, because if you're looking to a relationship to provide a sense of unconditional love, if you're looking to a person to meet all your needs, if you're looking to someone to provide a sense of satisfaction in your life, it promises to provide it, but it can only, check this out, it can only produce poverty. It can only make you poor. What I'm trying to say is rich people can be poor people. You can have it all and not have anything. You know what I mean? Some of the richest people in the world chase after money because money promises that it'll provide a sense of security in their life. And then when they look on their life, they're broke as a joke because they might have all the money in the world, but they have no relationships. They have No friendships, real friendships. Everyone's take, take, take. Give, 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 give me. But it's never a real relationship that goes both ways. Identity. We will exalt identity as an idol in our life. It's prevalent today with all the pronouns that are out there. I'll go there. Identity. Wonder why we have so many identity issues. Maybe it's because we're exalting identity over the one who gave us our identity.
Wow, that's good. So good.
Because when I look for identity as an idol, it's because it's promising to validate me at some level. But it can never validate you, and it can never add any value to you. And so you will constantly chase after what the idol demands next, what sacrifice it's offering you, what it's asking you to offer it next. And so then we go down this crazy road where we find ourselves today in a culture that's so confused with an identity that we've exalted it. Man, if we would just get back to putting God first, God, we were created in His image, it would settle a lot of identity issues that we're facing today. But we're putting it above God. We're giving God second place, and we're giving identity first place. The problem with all of this is that there's lots of ways to lose money. There's lots of ways to lose a career, a job, a marriage, your reputation, your identity. It comes and goes. So if you're putting your trust in something that is so fragile, it only produces poverty. It only produces a sense of, I don't have enough of it, so I got to get more of it. An idol worship, wherever it is in your life, maybe you're thinking about it and you're going, man, it might be. If it's promising provision that only God can provide, it's an idol. If it promises to provide what only God can come through on, it's an idol. I want to get back to this story. Now, therefore, send and gather all of Israel to me at Mount Carmel, or as my grandmother would say, caramel. And the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah. Turn to your neighbor and say Asherah. Who eat at Jezebel's table. Allow me to introduce to you the goddess of pleasure of the day. This is who Jezebel followed. Everybody know that phrase, like, she got a Jezebel spirit about her. This is who Jezebel followed. Now, Ahab was an evil king. He was following the gods that his wife was introducing to him. Talk about who you following. He's not even following the eye, he's following the woman. Which is crazy. Like, you will always be in trouble when you follow another person. Yeah. They will always lead you in the direction of false hope, false promises. If you're not following the Lord and everything that you have and all that you are, you need to be right now. You got to choose. Who am I going to follow? Because this one's crazy. This is the goddess of pleasure. When it's an idol, it will promise you that it can provide. It will also promise that it will serve your pleasure. This is my next point. Like, Asherah worship was insane. We're talking about, like, if it feels good, just do it. Self-indulgence to the max. The allure of sex. The overly sexualized society that we come from. It fails in comparison to what was happening back in this book right here. In 1 Kings chapter 18. Like, I'm talking about parties that make 6th Street, what happens at night on a Friday night on 6th Street, look like the backside of a dull butter knife. Like what happens on MTV, Spring Break, Real World, Road Rules stuff, look like PBS. Like what was going on with this worship was absolutely insane. It was have as much fun and physical pleasure as you possibly can before you die. It was all about living for the moment, living for today, living for those 2 words that we love to hear when we go to Chick-fil-A every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. But not Sunday, because as for Chick-fil-A and their restaurant, they follow the Lord and they take a Sabbath. My pleasure is what I'm talking about. You love it when they tell you my pleasure, don't you? Let me serve. Who are they serving when they say my pleasure? It's you. This type of work, if there's anything in your life that promises to serve you, I'm here to tell you it's an idol. If it promises to serve my pleasure, me, if it promises to serve you pleasure, it's an idol. I find it so fascinating that these 450 prophets of Asherah ate at Jezebel's table. As if to say that when you seek and search and follow after the pleasures, you will never satisfy your appetite. They're eating at the table. It's an appetite of worldly pleasure that serves me, my wants, my needs, my desires. So we'll lift up things that say they'll serve my satisfaction, my joy, my fulfillment, my fun, my entertainment. Now, you're like, hey, that's not all bad things. They're not all bad things. But they're idols when good things become ultimate things in your life. To serve me, to serve my pleasure. Like cell phones. You know it's an idol when the first thing you do in the morning is not thank God for the breath that he put in your lungs, but check your notifications. Who's trying to contact me? Who liked my post last night that I put out right before I went to bed? What am I missing out on in life? Listen, technology is not a bad thing. It's a great thing, but it will promise to serve your pleasure. Like delight. Like it promises to delight your desires on fire. Right? Like you name it, whether it's like social media, dopamine hit after dopamine hit, pornography, friends. Man, maybe you're scrolling through social media and you're like, I'm just going to spy on him or her. Like, it promises to delight your desire. You can get on YouTube and you can look up whatever hobby you want and get lost for 15 hours of a 24-hour day. You're just in there, and it promises to delight. You know what? It will never deliver. It will only distract. Wow. I'll delight your desires. That's what an idol will say. Netflix and chill. Just want to hang out. Just want to binge watch episode after episode after episode. You know what it's really doing? It's distracting you from the will of God. It's distracting you from the purpose. Hey, it'll promise connection with all the 5G this and the 5G that. And we're more connected than ever. When you go out to lunch today or dinner tonight, look around the restaurant. You're going to have to put your phone down first. And look at all the people who are disconnected from the conversations with the people right in front of them because they're connected with everyone else who's not in the room. It promises that it will connect you. It delivers on the most disconnected generation in the history of the world. Not only are we disconnected because of technology, we're divided through it. I mean, if it offers right satisfaction, the God of I will provide you pleasure. So that's why we have comfort food, Bluebell ice cream, prescription drugs, illegal drugs, adult beverages, parties on the weekends. Some of us are like, I'm not that bad. But vacations, maybe you're like me in sports. Oh, don't go there, Pastor Bobby. We're Cowboy fans. Yes, we are. But you know sports has become an idol when you skip church to watch NFL pregame shows and all 3 Sunday games. Wow. Oh. Can I step on your toes? Where are all my Dallas fans at? That hurt my heart. Where are all the NFL fans at? Okay. You're like, no, I'm not clapping. We're talking about idolatry. I'm not owning that one. For real. You know, Cowboy fans, okay. You know it's an idol when you've spent more money on your team's apparel than you have tied to God all year. Promises my satisfaction. Look at what Solomon said. We don't know who wrote Ecclesiastes, but we're pretty sure it was King Solomon. He said, I denied myself nothing Nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor. And this was the reward for all of my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and all that I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. As chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. It's pointless, that's what he says. If it's here to serve me, my pleasure, it's pointless. Solomon is the one who builds the temple of God. He actually builds the temple of God in 966 BC. Shortly after he builds the temple, he starts to follow the gods of all his many wives. Like, you think you've got marriage problems. Solomon has got thousands of women in his life. Many of them wives, many of them mistresses. Just put it like that. And he's following their religion, their gods. He's following after his pleasure, and it's leading them to follow the pleasures of other things. And so he starts, after he sets up the temple where God is to be worshiped, he builds the temple. He shortly introduces, after that, worship of other gods right outside his temple. Because we're just going to make everybody feel happy in this society. We got to please everybody. We can't step on toes. I want to keep the kingdom rocking and rolling in the same direction. So yeah, we've got God, but we have everybody else's opinions and options and choices too. You can follow whoever you want. You can follow all of them together if you want. And so idolatry steps onto the scene, and in 722 BC is the fall of Israel, the northern kingdom. Temple is destroyed by the Syrian army, and when you look at the numerical difference, it's 244 years between the temple being built and the temple being first destroyed because of idolatry. There's a study out there by a guy named Sir John Clubb, and he writes an essay, a paper on the fate of empires. His conclusion is that the average age of a nation is 250 years old, and he has an entire life cycle. Like some of you are doing the math, like, how old is America? There's a lot in there. I'm not going to get into all of that. That's not the time or the place for it. But one of the issues of decadence, decline in a civilization, is when there is a weakening of religion and you stop following what started the whole thing and you start following after the pleasures of the people. The nation starts and soon crumbles, falls apart. 244 years after Israel sets up the temple to worship God. This is crazy numbers. It's fallen because of idol worship. Who are you serving? Who are you following? Because if it offers to serve your pleasure, it will only create more problems. The solution is not to follow things that serve my pleasure, but to follow the one and serve his purpose. Because when I follow God and serve his will for my life, his purpose for my life, check this out. What pleases him begins to please me. What brings him joy brings me the joy that I've been looking for. What brings him great pleasure starts to bring me great pleasure. Psalm 16, this was Solomon's daddy who wrote this. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. When I serve God's purpose in my life, it serves my pleasure. I'm telling you, man, there's no greater feeling than being the hand and feet of God. I get more joy out there in the parking lot waving people into a parking space than it's better to give than to receive, right? And when you start living your life, you say, God, I'm going to get fixated on you. I'm going to get focused on you for my family. I'm a leader, but I'm going to be a good leader because I'm going to be a good follower. And I'm going to follow your purpose. I'm going to follow your plan. I'm going to follow your will. It leads you away from every other distraction, every other issue that you're going to fall in and out of throughout life. And it starts to bring you the satisfaction, the happiness that you've been looking for. No longer do you have an appetite, you're full. We've identified that there is idolatry in the midst of the people when it promises whatever that idol is that it can provide, what only God can provide, when it promises to serve my pleasure and lead you away from serving what is pleasing to God. And it's also an idol when it promises power. Power of the dark side. The promise of power. Where do you feel powerless today? Where do you feel powerless? Where do you feel hopeless? Where do you feel like I'm up against this and there's no way I can do this on my own? In your marriage? In your health? What's got you feeling so hopeless that you will go to whatever it is that offers promises that it has the power to pick you up and pull you out of that mess? That you'll elevate that, exalt that, and lift that above the one true God of all power and all authority. We do it all the time. This is what the whole story of 1 Kings chapter 18 really comes down to. It comes down to this deal of who has the power. Elijah assembles them all and then he says, all right, you take your prophets, and they put together a sacrifice. And we're going to call down from your God. You get to go first. Call down from God, and if he burns up the sacrifice, fire from heaven is what the rules are. If it burns it up, your God is God. It's not going to happen because Elijah knows that anything that is made by human hands is a little g God, and little g gods have no power. Psalms 135 says, they have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. Those who make them will be like them. Those who trust in, and so will all who trust in them. Which is to say, if it's powerless, you'll be powerless. So he said, go, put him to the test. Do it right now. So they get this sacrifice, they prepare an altar, they put it on the altar, and they start calling from breakfast to noon, to lunch. They start, come on, you can do it. We believe in you. It's crazy because they had faith in their God to show up and provide in power, even though he was not providing in power for 3 years. Elijah at lunch starts to get a little like edgy, taunting. I love Elijah here. He's like, hey, maybe you need to scream louder. Maybe he's asleep. Maybe he doesn't hear you. Hey, maybe he's on vacation. So just get a little more pumped, get a little more intense. Like, you got to wake him up. You got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it, because Elijah knows that if it promises power, you're going to have to provide and sustain it in your power to keep it going. So you do it. Come on, let's see how futile your efforts are. It gets to the point they go from lunch to dinner. They're exhausted. They're dehydrated. They're worn out. They're frustrated. They start to cut themselves with knives. Anything they can do to get the attention of their God. I think the point there, the spiritual significance is that if it's an idol and it's demanding that you follow it because it will give you power, it will only leave you with more pain. They're inflicting pain on themselves to try to get their God to move in mighty and powerful ways. And they give up, and he says, all right, my turn. Here's the deal. I'm not going to do anything like you did. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to dig a trench around my altar, and we're going to fill it up with water 3 times. Get 4 huge water jugs. Dump it on the sacrifice. Saturate it with water. Check this. They're in the middle of a drought. Water is a valuable commodity. And he's going, you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. I'm going to put my faith, all my faith on the line. It's not by my power, not by my strength, but by the Spirit of the Lord. He's going to show up, he's going to show out, and he's going to do something that only he can do in this moment. And he says a prayer to God, and he goes, Father, answer me today. Use this moment to show the people who really holds the power, so that they will repent, they will turn, and they will follow you and God hears his prayer and his request, and he answers with his supreme authority and his full power on display when in 1 Kings chapter 18 he says, immediately the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven, burned up the young bull, the wood on the stones were all gone. It took the dust, it licked up all the water in the trench, and when the people saw it, they fell flat down on their face and cried out, the Lord, he is God. Yes, the Lord is God. Woo! Some of you are in here trying to, in your power, which is a form of idolatry, do things that only God can do. I'll just do it on my own. I can do it. You can't. You can't do it. Who are you worshiping today? Who are you following? The one true God who hears you, who answers prayers, who never sleeps, who's never too busy, who never goes on a vacation. Listen, the greatest force of power I've ever witnessed is when people of God who know how to follow first his will for their life say, here I am, use me, whatever you say goes. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's where God's power is on full display. I'll prove it to you. A sea couldn't stop Moses. A wall couldn't stop Joshua. Goliath could not stop David. The Baals, Asherah, could not stop Elijah. And nothing can stop God from moving in power when you put him first in your life. For all the power belongs to God, now and forever, amen.